Hi, the EM10 Mark II comes with an IAUTO mode. Most cameras have this setting. Basically it turns it into a point and shoot type of camera for beginners, and it's very good to learn using this mode. It's very similar to the P program mode where the camera does all the thinking, but it has less features that you can change when you're in IAUTO mode. Instead, the IAUTO mode will give you a thing called Live Guide, which is a feature that has like sliding adjustments, and also it gives you some helpful tips and examples for different types of scenarios on how to shoot. There's some settings like sequential shooting, autofocus can be set and changed, and that will come in handy when in some of the tips and suggestions that it tells you to do to take better photos. By factory default, the IAUTO only will display the Live Guide menu, but you can add two other display panels and you can cycle through them using the info button. I'll show you what I mean by that. So this is the live view here. You can press the OK button, or you can touch the screen and it brings it across. There are two other menu systems. The way to turn them on is to go into the menu system, go to display, control settings, and then in the IAUTO option, the live guide is what I just showed you then. Then you've got this other guide called Live Control, and then you've got Live SCP, which is Super Control Panel. So you can click that on. The Live Control and the Live SCP are very similar. So I'll show you what they actually are. So this is the live guide I just showed you. And then when you're in one of the modes, if you press the info button, that's the live control, and then that's the live SCP super control panel. The super control panel, this one here, is probably the one that you'll use the most moving forward, because that's the easiest, and that one has a touch screen as well, so you can touch into wherever you want to go. So remember, the info key changes it. These ones here, it's very similar. It's just that it's just a different way of accessing the same options. But for now, let's just concentrate on the live guide, see what they can do. So the first one at the top here is the color saturation. You can use the sliders to move up and down, and you'll have clear and vivid and flat and muted. Where you want to set it, you just press enter, and then you see a little tick there. That means that it's actually been turned on. And also when you go back to the menu, you see down here there's a little color here. That means that something's been turned on and been changed. So if you want to cancel whatever you're doing, just hit the menu button and then you'll see that the tick has gone. The others are the color, image, the brightness, the blur background, express motions, and then there's also shooting tips. With this, you can actually have more than one setting at a time. So for instance, if I increase the saturation a bit, and then I go back in, and then maybe I want to change the color to be a little bit cooler. Okay, so let's test out this live guide. The first one on the menu system is the color saturation. Let's take a few photos and we'll see what we can do when we change the color saturation from clear and vivid down to flat and muted. So okay, let's take a look at this vegetation here. It's a little bit dull, so I think I might bring up the colors using the clear and vivid. So this is a normal shot, and then this is with the clear and vivid. Next one is the changing of the color. You can change colors, you can warm the color or you can cool the color. So let's have a look at some examples of that. So let's have a look at this mango tree anyway, and we'll try and warm it up a bit and make it look like it's a nice sunny day. Now you don't have to go all, you can just use subtle movements with brightness. For instance, this shot here is okay, but if I just wanted to increase it a little bit, just to get a little bit more out of the shot, you just can take 1 or 2 steps in the slider and you can get a subtle change in the photo. And in this shot, it's pretty good by itself, but it just lowering the light a bit, making it a little bit darker, it just changes the effect a little subtly. So the next one is to blur the background or sharpen the background. Basically all that's doing is just increasing the aperture size to blur it and decreasing the aperture size to make it sharp from front to back. Now there are a few other tricks you can do to do that. You can zoom in onto the subject. That increases the blurriness of the background as well. It's not perfect blurry background, but for IAUTO it does the trick. You can see here when I fully set the blur all the way to the top of the slider, the aperture was set at 3.5 and it also changed the shutter speed to 1:250. And then when I set the slider all the way to the bottom for full sharpness, you can see it decreased the size of the aperture to f16, and it also decreased the shutter speed to 1/60th of a second, obviously to let more light in. Whenever you change the slider up or down by 1 step, it's roughly changing the aperture by 1 stop or so to get that effect. So the last option in the live guide is to express motions. So that you can either blur an image or you can stop it dead in its tracks. So obviously what that's doing is changing the shutter speed. So let's test it out and see what we can get out of the live guide. So this example, you can see when I took a normal shot, it shows 1/25 of a second shutter speed, and you can see a little bit of the leaf is blurry because the wind was blowing it. But then when I changed the slider all the way to stop motion, it changed the speed to 1/11600th of a second, which stopped the motion. But as a side effect, you'll also notice that the picture got a little bit darker. That's because the shutter speed was fast and it didn't let as much light in.